Yo everybody, it's me, Fitness65, bringing you a new video. I'm redoing this WrestleMania 7 review again because I tried to do it 2 times and then I uploaded it again just now, and I didn't really like how that video came out, so I'm redoing it again. So we get started with the first matchup on here from WrestleMania 7, which was in the LA Coliseum, the Staples Center, what the Staples Center is now, with the Rockers against the Barbarian and Aku. This was a very good, fast-paced, big man, little man type of matchup. You had the Rockers go out there and sell for the Barbarian and Aku, sell every single offense of them. You had the Rockers hit some nice, high-flying, impactful moves in this matchup, and it was just a very good matchup, and it was probably one of the best WrestleMania opening matches that there's ever been. And there's a couple, but to me this is pretty much up there, as this was a very good WrestleMania matchup. The end came to this matchup when the Rockers hit the double drop kick to sort of end things for the Barbarian and Aku. Overall, I give this match 3.5 stars, maybe 3 3/4, because this was a very good matchup. Highly enjoyed it. The crowd was really into it. I really enjoyed this, and I was on the edge of my seat during this matchup because it was a high-flying, action-packed match. Very good matchup. We then go to the next matchup on this card, which was Dino Bravo against the Texas Tornado. This was not a very good matchup. It was boring, it was slow, it was hard to get into. You had both guys hit some botched spots. I think Dino Bravo botched a back suplex on the Texas Tornado. Texas Tornado botched some moves in this matchup. Just a hard matchup to watch, and it's sad that seeing these two wrestle against each other, knowing that these two would die maybe a year later after this, a year or two later after this. It's just a shame to see that. But overall, the match itself just was not a very good matchup, and I recommend you don't watch this matchup. This match was just so hard to sit through, as it should have been a decent matchup, but it just turned out to be just a hard matchup to watch, as this was just awful, and probably one of the worst matches on this card. And there's a couple, but this is one of the worst matches of the night on this card. Awful, just awful match. I give this match a star, and that's pretty much being generous, because this was just not a very good matchup, and it was just hard to sit through this matchup. We're going to go to the third matchup, which was a power versus power matchup between the British Bulldog and the Warlord. This was a decent power versus power matchup. You had the British Bulldog hit his usual offense. You had the Warlord, who was doing his thing in this matchup, and it was pretty good, and the crowd pretty much got into it, and it was pretty fun matchup for what you got and for the two participants in this matchup. The ending came in this matchup when the Barbarian had the British Bulldog in that full Nelson submission, and then the British Bulldog reversed it into a power slam, and that'd be the end of this matchup. Overall, I give this match a good 2.5 stars, as this was a good, decent matchup, and I enjoyed it. We then go to the fourth matchup on here, which was a very disappointing matchup, considering that the Hart Foundation were in this matchup. It was for the WWF Tag Team titles. It was the Hart Foundation against the Nasty Boys. Very disappointing matchup. I expected a lot more from the Hart Foundation, and the way this match was built leading into WrestleMania 7, I was expecting something real good, but instead you just got a really short matchup that should have got a lot of time, but it didn't get a lot of time, and thus you got what you got for the amount of time this matchup got. And the end came when Jimmy Hart hit Bret Hart or Jim the Anvil Neidhart with a megaphone or a helmet on Bret Hart or Jim the Anvil Neidhart to pick up the win, and thus the Nasty Boys were your new WWF Tag Team Champions. Overall, I give this 2 stars. Could have been higher if this match was a lot more longer, because I know that the Hart Foundation could have got a good match out of the Nasty Boys, but considering the time and how the way this match was booked, this matchup just didn't get enough time, and it should have got as much time as it should have, but they didn't, and thus I give this match 2 stars. Probably the Hart Foundation's worst match in the WWF around that time, as they were putting on good matches with just about any team, but here they just couldn't get anything out of it. They just couldn't get anything for the time that this match was given. So I give this match 2 stars. We then go to the fifth matchup on this card, which was the blindfold matchup between Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick the Model Martel. This was in an entertainment standpoint for this matchup was pretty good, but wrestling wise, this matchup was off. This matchup was just awful and really hard to get into, but like I said, entertainment wise, it was funny. The crowd got into it. You had some funny moments in this matchup. It took a while before the wrestling got started, but it sort of picked up a little bit, even though it did drag a little bit. It was still funny. It was still fun for entertainment way, and thus I'm going to give this a good 2.5 stars, as the crowd was really into this matchup. But like I said, as a wrestling matchup, this was just not a very good matchup, but it served its purpose, and it pretty much ended the feud between Jake Roberts and Rick the Model Martel. We then go to the 6th matchup on here, which was between Jimmy Superfly Snuka and The Undertaker. This was just your standard squash matchup, pretty much where the streak began of Undertaker making his WrestleMania debut. He pretty much just dominated this matchup. He hit old school on Jimmy Superfly Snuka, hit a flying clothesline on Jimmy Superfly Snuka, hit all of his usual Undertaker offense that you see him use now on Jimmy Superfly Snuka. The end came when I believe The Undertaker caught Jimmy Superfly Snuka from the outside, and he tombstoned him in the inside of the ring, and that was pretty much the end of your matchup. Just your standard squash. I give this 2 stars, as there was some history behind this matchup, and it pretty much got Undertaker over as a dominant monster in the WWF around that time. We then go to the next matchup on here, which was the retirement matchup between the Macho King Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. Very good matchup. A lot of drama, a lot of storytelling, and just pretty much everything that you want in a matchup. It had that. You had Ultimate Warrior hit his power moves in here, Randy Savage doing everything it took to sort of end the Warrior's career. You had both guys use their finishers on each other, with the Macho Man doing like 5 or 6 elbow drops to the top rope on Warrior, and then Warrior kicking out of him. You had Warrior hit his splash on Savage, and Savage kicking out. You had Savage hit some moves on the outside, and then you had Warrior in the end hit the shoulder block a couple times to sort of end the matchup. Very good matchup. I enjoyed it, and it's exactly what matches nowadays need to, in mainstream wrestling, need to be. Storytelling, a lot of impact, and the crowd getting into it, and just some drama, and that's what's missing in most mainstream wrestling. But overall, I give this a 4 3/4 stars. Very good matchup. And then the end of the match, after the end of the match, you had Sherry beat on the Macho Man, Randy Savage, because she was out of a job, and then you had Miss Elizabeth come out of the crowd, out through the crowd area, and sort of help Macho Man Randy Savage, and then you had the 2 reunite, setting up their wedding at WrestleMania at SummerSlam 1991. Overall, 4 3/4 stars. And enjoyed this matchup. We then go to the 9th matchup on here, which was for the Intercontinental title between Mr. Perfect and the Big Boss Man. This was a very good, this was a disappointing matchup. These two had some good matches on house shows, but for some reason they just didn't click, and you can pretty much tell watching this matchup that something just didn't click in this matchup, and this matchup should have been good and one of the best matches on the card, but just turned out to be an average matchup and a very disappointing matchup. Overall, I give this a good 2 stars, as there was some good aspects of wrestling in this matchup, but it was just a disappointing matchup considering the build up to this matchup. We then go to the 10th matchup on here, which was between the Legion of Doom and Power and Glory. Just pretty much your standard squash, pretty much a dud, as Legion of Doom pretty much just beat on them, and then they hit the Doomsday Device, ending that matchup. Just pretty much the match to sort of get LOD as one of the dominant tag teams in the WWF. So pretty much a dud. We then go to Virgil with Roddy Piper versus $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase for the $1 Million belt. Overall, I give this match 2 stars. There was some good wrestling, mainly DiBiase carrying this matchup, and then some storytelling with DiBiase showing Virgil that he should have never left him in the first place, and then Roddy Piper getting involved in the end, and then Ted DiBiase beating on him. Sort of was supposed to be DiBiase and Piper, but because of Piper's injury, they had to go with Virgil and DiBiase. Overall, very decent matchup. I give it 2 stars. Then you got the Mountie against Tito Santana. Pretty much a dud, as the match, they were wrestling a little bit, and then the Mountie shocked Tito Santana, getting the win there. And then finally, the main event for the WWF title, Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan. I give this match 2.5 stars. You had some good aspects in this matchup. Hulk Hogan did some